This series introduces Youth Participatory Action Research, or YPAR, an approach that empowers young people to lead research projects addressing issues that impact their lives. YPAR groups identify and investigate topics of concern to them. Topics can cover a wide range, such as improving teacher-student relationships or providing free to low-cost spaces for youth in a community. Groups spend time identifying a topic. Sometimes this step may include collecting data from a community. After identifying a topic, youth are trained to gather data, for example, surveys, interviews, or art, and draw on this evidence to advocate for changes that matter to them. Sometimes, youth act directly to enact change based on the collected data through peer education or other forms of youth-led programming. In other cases, youth advocate to adults who have decision-making power to change policies, refine practices, and/or create programs. YPAR fosters collaboration between youth and adults, enabling youth to develop key skills, advocate for change, and build agency. YPAR also supports adults in schools, communities, and other youth-serving systems to benefit from insider expertise of youth in creative, youth-driven solutions to issues that matter to them. More information about the steps involved in a YPAR process is covered in our first module, What is YPAR? In the first video in this series, we highlighted the 6 steps in the YPAR process: planning, build your team, identify a topic, develop research tools and collect data, analyze and interpret data, and take action. This video focuses on 3 steps of the YPAR process: identifying a topic, collecting information and data, and analyzing and interpreting data. YPAR is unique from other group-based projects or forms of youth participation because young people are in charge of gathering data sometimes to identify a topic, and almost always about the topic to answer their own research questions. This video will go over 3 methods of data collection and analysis for YPAR: quantitative, qualitative, and arts-based. We will also offer a real-world example from a YPAR group. Each type of data collection serves a unique purpose, and all are valuable tools to help you answer complex questions. Before you decide on how data will be collected, youth need to identify the specific problem, issue, or opportunity the YPAR group will study. Ideally, as part of the YPAR project, youth researchers get to identify a topic they care about. Realistically, sometimes the topic has been predetermined by another group of youth, a grant, or adults before the YPAR group is established. Sometimes groups identify a topic by collecting and analyzing data from their community to inform selection. If the topic was pre-identified, it is important to be clear about how the decision was made and what types of decisions youth will make in tailoring their investigation to match their experiences and interests. When youth choose the topic, take time early on to help them brainstorm, explore options, and decide together. While any topic is possible, it helps to choose something they're connected to and that could realistically be addressed in their school or community. For example, in video 2, Erie's group studied the quality of their school's drinking fountain water, an issue that affected them directly, could be shared with decision makers, and ultimately led to change. In other examples, like Chris, who you will meet later, shares that youth can collect data from their community to inform the topic they will focus on for their YPAR project. Support youth by asking about the topics they propose, the questions they want their YPAR project to answer, and the changes they hope to see. This helps them clarify their experiences, the group's interest, the key decision makers, and possible actions to address the issue. Selecting a topic is important, so it is essential to build in enough time for the youth to discuss ideas, possibly collect data to inform selection, and come to agreement. They will end up spending a lot of time working on collecting and analyzing data and taking action, so it is important to ensure that most, if not all, of the members of the group are committed to and interested in this topic. Both the YPAR Hub and Stepping Stones curriculum have existing guides to help groups define their topics. Your choice of research method should be intentional, since data collection methods need to align with the research questions. Some methods are better suited to certain questions than others. Consider who the decision makers are. For example, the local school board or the school principal, as different audiences respond to different kinds of data. Photos may spur action, while statistics or percentages may be more persuasive for other audiences. Also consider the group's capacity and timeline for data collection, since some methods take longer to administer or analyze. When it comes to collecting data, whether to inform topic selection or investigate it, there are three main categories of data collection methods: quantitative, qualitative, and arts-based. Depending on your project goals, it may be important to combine different data collection methods in order to get all the information needed to identify or understand the topic and make a compelling case for change. We're going to give an overview of each type of data collection method and when it is most useful. Quantitative methods involve collecting information and summarizing this information numerically. Quantitative data types can be useful in answering questions that have to do with how much or how often something occurs in a community, such as, what percentage of young people have used a tobacco or nicotine product in the last 30 days? There are three main types of quantitative data you might want to collect: discrete data, continuous data, or categorical data. Discrete data is any data point that is counted in whole numbers. Some examples of this are the number of students in a class or the number of interactions with social media posts. Discrete data is often presented in bar charts. Continuous data include numbers that can be any value within a range. Continuous data can be a percentage, such as the percentage of students at a school who report enjoying the school lunch. It can also be the mean or average of a group of numbers, such as the average number of classes missed by seniors in May. Continuous data is often presented in line charts or histograms. Categorical data allows us to categorize or group people or things based on shared characteristics. For example, if you were going to issue a survey in a school setting, you would probably ask the respondent what grade they were in. This would allow you to report out the number of responses you got from each grade level. Categorical data can be presented in pie charts and bar graphs. Quantitative data can be gathered in different ways, but mostly it is done by administering surveys or reviewing existing data sources. For example, if you were interested in learning about the satisfaction with the extracurricular activities offered in your school, you could make a survey that asks people some demographic questions about themselves and questions about their participation and satisfaction with extracurricular activities. You could also look at public data collected in your school, county, or state. If your school or state already collects a survey about the topic, it can be helpful to look to see what questions were asked and if that data can help the youth understand their topic. Quantitative data is typically analyzed with statistics. This can range from simple measures, like percentages or the mean and median, to more advanced statistics using tools and software. For example, teams might report that 60% of students have an adult they can turn to, or share the average number of hours youth spent on social media last Sunday. If the group decides to collect or analyze quantitative data, youth may need training on how to write unbiased survey questions, the best methods for collecting surveys, how to analyze the results using a spreadsheet, and how to present their findings using charts or figures. Qualitative data collection methods focus on collecting information through words, stories, and observations. Qualitative methods are very useful for describing how people do things or why things happen the way that they do. Some examples of questions that could be answered with qualitative data include: what are the strategies used by teenagers to promote positive mental health when using social media? These questions get at more complex experiences that are not as easy to be summed up entirely by numerical data. Methods for qualitative data collection include one-on-one interviews, focus groups, open-ended surveys, and observations. In an interview, interviewees are asked questions about their lives, experiences, or expertise because they have relevant experience with the topic. Sometimes interviews are recorded and transcribed. Other times, the interviewer takes notes during the conversation. For example, if a group wanted to learn about students' experiences with school discipline, they might select and interview students who were suspended last year. Interviews have pluses like they are private, can be appropriate for sensitive topics, and allow a deeper look into one's personal experiences. But scheduling and conducting interviews takes time, usually more time than a survey. A focus group is an interview with a small group of people, often 5 to 10. This allows the research team to hear from more people at once about a topic. Similar to interviews, focus groups can be recorded and transcribed, or the facilitators can take notes. For example, if your group could gather a group of students who all eat school lunch to share what they like and dislike. A plus of both interviews and focus groups is the ability to ask follow-up questions. A potential downside of focus groups is that, especially when the topic is sensitive, like mental health challenges, some young people might feel uncomfortable speaking up in a group. An open-ended survey is a survey that allows respondents to write in longer-form answers rather than just numerical answers or checking a box. This allows more information to be collected than a simple survey. Compared to interviews or focus groups, open-ended surveys can be a helpful tool for gathering a higher quantity of responses, as it is less time and resource intensive. They can also more easily be anonymous, which might make some people feel more comfortable with participating. One drawback of a survey is that the student researchers won't be able to ask follow-up questions. Observations refer to watching a process or experience and taking detailed notes. Observations allow for you to witness and record things as they happen. For example, if a group wanted to know what food is most often thrown away, they could stand by the trash and track what items are discarded most often. After collecting qualitative data, teams usually summarize it through coding, reading transcripts, and identifying recurring ideas. For example, interviews about school climate might yield codes related to safety, such as lunchtime safety, classroom safety, or after-school safety. These codes are then grouped into broader categories or themes with more specific sub-themes. Teams may also select quotes that clearly illustrate each theme when presenting their findings. If the group decides to collect or analyze qualitative data, youth may need training on how to ask open-ended questions and follow up with probing questions, and manage group dynamics such as encouraging quieter participants or asking someone who has spoken often to step back. Arts-based methods are very similar to qualitative methods, but use an art form rather than words or stories to understand people's experiences. This can allow people to engage with the prompts in ways that might be more meaningful or accessible to them. In practice, this can look like collecting art creations from the community that your YPAR group is researching in the form of paintings, murals, poetry or spoken word, music or dance performance, or photography and videography. This is often done by providing participants with a prompt or prompts and giving them the space and time to create their response. A common form of arts-based method used in YPAR and other research projects is photo voice. In photo voice, participants are given prompts and cameras and are asked to document their experiences with the prompt through photography. Participants then discuss their photos and develop narratives that describe what the photo captures and how it relates to their lives. In some cases, these narratives are recorded and can be analyzed the same as a focus group transcript. However, most often, the photos and narratives are put together into an installation that is accompanied by individual and group storytelling about their experiences. Usually, arts-based methods in YPAR are part of visually depicting the topic, but not as often analyzed into summaries like the other two methods. Therefore, you might pair arts-based methods with quotes from participants or statistics to make the most compelling case. Participants can also analyze their own art, especially if you use multiple art forms over several weeks in response to prompts. Participating youth can answer questions like, "What does your art tell us you need or want?" Arts-based methods like photo voice have pluses in that they allow participants to engage with the topic more deeply and have a larger role in the result of the project. The more open-ended nature compared to traditional qualitative methods allows participants more creative freedom. Using arts-based methods can make participating in the project more accessible for individuals who might have difficulties expressing themselves verbally. However, creating art can be time and resource intensive. If the group decides to collect, analyze, and/or display art, youth may need training on the specific arts method and specific guidelines for safety and privacy. In the case of photo voice, participants are often discouraged from taking photos of faces to protect anonymity. When it comes to your YPAR project, there is not one right data collection method. What works for your group's goals and research question depends on the resources available, including time to complete the project. In some cases, combining research methods and using a mixed methods approach might actually be best. For example, if the group of youth you are working with want to study belonging in their community, they might consider creating a survey about belonging to share widely throughout the community and engage a group of 10 youth in a photo voice project about belonging. The YPAR Hub has a series of short videos designed by and for young people about many of the data collection methods mentioned in this video. The Youth Inquiry in Action series provides youth with specific training on how to carry out many of the methods. It can be accessed via the QR code on the screen. Both the YPAR Hub and Stepping Stones curriculum, steps 4 through 7, have lesson plans and activities to support youth in selecting and engaging with many of these methods. Regardless of which type of data you collected, it is best practice to report your summary of findings back to the community that was involved in the data collection effort to check for accuracy and representation and how their statements were analyzed. We are now going to hear from Chris, a past participant in a YPAR project at Power Youth Center for Social Change in Florida, about their experiences using multiple methods of data collection to identify their topic.
Hi, I'm Chris. I worked on a YPAR project focused on utility justice with Power U's environmental justice campaign in Miami, Florida. Um, and to talk a little bit more about how we, settled and identified the problem, um, and how we landed on utility justice. Initially, you've attended a District 5 community meeting where you've took notes on environmental concerns. That was then followed by peer data through gallery activities like gallery walks that really documented environmental injustices from their own lived experiences. And this data was then compiled into community complaints alongside the previous community canvassing field research that we did. And so some of the complaints were, um, you know, rate hikes, flooding, trash, air pollution, lack of trees, contaminated water. And so the Youth Steering Committee voted unanimously to collect more systematic community data before proceeding with the campaign, which was initially going to be um, on trash. And so youth gave feedback on a survey form where they asked community members what are some additional unlisted issues, and we collected their contact info as well. And so the youth canvassed several areas in pairs and collected quantitative data, such as how many conversations were they conducting, um, and their contact information, whether they could commit to meeting with us again in the future, what were the specific issues that community members were facing and really felt empowered by. And so the biggest quantitative thing was the overall issue ranking from the community members. Um, the youth also felt really empowered by the like qualitative data methods. So specific stories about how flooding, health impacts, and utility costs really impacted community members. Um, and so after we received the survey results, the youth reviewed them, specifically analyzing the quantitative and qualitative data. And we all, as a committee, reviewed the data patterns and voted democratically on the problem to investigate. They also researched other city programs, such as the San Jose Bridge Employment Program for Beautification, what are green infrastructure solutions and things like that. Um, and we really settled on um, utility justice based on this democratic decision making, and based on these criteria that they were deciding um, felt appropriate and strategic. Um, and working a little bit backwards on the data collection methods, you've identified the need for base demographics. They also identified base categories. So renters, people near dumping zones, people who are unhoused, people near highways. And they also identified key allies to research, environmental organizations that were doing similar work, researchers, faith groups, local businesses, and also following that, they determined what data was missing, what are we still unclear on, what voices are missing, and they really recognized the need for community priority data, decision maker stance data, policy funding data. where they then ideated that the most appropriate thing with the information that they had thus far was to meet with city commissioners and district commissioners, where the youth really strategized the key interview questions to ask the commissioners, and generated specific questions for these commissioners and for residents that were maybe present in this meeting. I think it overall proved to be a very fruitful experience. And when I would conduct one-on-ones with the youth, a lot of them felt very empowered and happy, to be working on an issue that really resonated with their own lived experiences, and one that was really rooted in a broader economic, political, and structural change that we all wanted to see.
There are many different ways for young people to collect data to select their topic or help answer the research question during a YPAR project. Combining different data collection and analysis methods can be helpful for answering complex questions that involve an individual's unique experiences. It is important to start the process by identifying what topics are important to the youth that you are working with and what they want the ultimate goal of their work to be so that you can work together to best design a project to achieve that goal. The series of modules is a collaboration between the Colorado School of Public Health, the University of California, Berkeley, and the YPAR network. Funding for this series is provided by the Bezos Family Foundation. The principal investigators of this grant are Emily J. Ozer and Linda Sprague Martinez. The UC Berkeley YPAR Hub offers foundational materials, tools, and lesson plans to support your project. These resources focus on essential topics like youth-adult partnerships, community engagement, and promoting equality, which are vital to the YPAR process.